Okay then, Mauro, thanks ever so much for agreeing to join me on the Work in Progress podcast.
Yeah, Dean, thanks for having me here.
And I understand that you're in the sunny part of Spain, but it's not quite that sunny right now.
No, actually, today was a little bit colder, but in general, it's still good. Like when the sun is here, you can go for a swim at, lunchtime
So you haven't you
in
haven't thought
December.
so you haven't thought about moving in the winter to a more sunny climate.
No, no, that's why I
Yeah.
moved here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason I was really keen to catch up with you is because you talk about a lot of topics online which are quite close to my interests, quite close to my heart. In years long ago, I trained as a personal trainer, and I don't want to say I was sort of disenchanted by the industry, but I didn't get what I wanted from it. And there was lots of topics which I found that weren't fully explained in the course, and there's lots of areas of it which I think are quite important, really, to getting results. And I've been following you online, and you talk quite a lot about some of those areas which got a lot of my attention. You know, things like internal biochemistry and your mindset, and getting things just right so that you can get the optimal results. Because in a weird way, the exercises are the exercises, right? They're not that complicated, and all you got to do is lift, push, pull, exert a bit of energy, and that basically is exercise, right? However, there's a whole other myriad of things which determines whether or not you get a result, and these are the things that you talk a lot about, and I think require a lot more attention. So I was keen to get you on to share some of that. So I guess for everyone who's never heard of the man that is Mauro, um, who are you in your own words, and how did you get into the fitness industry?
Yeah, sure. So I've been coaching for the last 5.5 years. And just like you, I started out as a personal trainer, more as a side thing. Like I was in banking for also 5.5 years. So the same time as I run my business now, which is funny. And yeah, I was in banking. So that's like the real background, and was working like with middle-aged guys, executives, CEOs, project managers, and yeah, just guys mostly in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And it was always about, wealth, status, leadership, all these things that didn't mean that much to me back then. And all I cared about was lifting weights, lifting weights. So as I transformed myself and started to see great results, people reached out to me privately from work, around the corner, and they said, "Hey, can you help me?" And this is where things kicked off. And fast forward, I was, coaching them, giving them advice, working out with them offline, in person, at the gym, in terms of personal training, but also in terms of nutrition a little bit, more like via email and these old spreadsheets that we used to have. And then I wanted to take things online. I was like, okay, I can't really serve or help someone just in person. Like that's too little, because 1 hour at the gym or 30 minutes at the gym, like that's 2 to 40% of your day. What about the other 95%? Right? This happens not at the gym, and this is where actually results are driven. So I want to push things online, and with banking, with personal training, and with the online business, there was just so much on my plate that I neglected myself. Now I was the guy that was chasing wealth and gave up my health in the process, until my health became the bottleneck. I started to become fat, which is the worst thing you can be as a personal trainer or as a fitness coach. In terms of integrity, congruency, yeah, just trust your own clients. I had heart issues, burnout, chronic stress, like all the things that come with it that so many guys in business have, and also women, if they're listening to this podcast. And once I fixed it, I really found, okay, um, here's an opportunity for me to lead guys just like me that I was actually working with in banking, and help them fix what I was going through, and what requires way more than just some training or some meal plan. This is ultimately where I am today. And yeah, so a lot of people use the phrase, "I turn my mess into my message," or "my pain into my story, my pain into the solution. I filled the gap." And I would say I've done the same or a similar thing.
I've never heard that before. My mess into my message. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's mine now. I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to keep that at some point. But yeah, absolutely, you have to find a story where you can relate to your audience, so to speak. And one of my challenges, I suppose, with the whole personal training industry, and there are some fantastic coaches out there, so I'm definitely not knocking the industry. But I found that there were a lot of trainers out there that have just always been in great shape. At school they were, captains of the team. They've always been ripped. They've always had time for sports. They love sports so much they made it their career, and now they've always been in great shape, right? And I guess with the body, there's a lot of, we call it muscle memory and things like that. But if the body's only ever known being in great shape, it's almost hard not to be, right? And when you're dealing with a client, so to speak, who maybe has worked a 50-hour week, they've got burnout, they're they're stressed to the hills, they've got a family, they've got a lack of time. How do you then translate, I've never had any of those problems, into this is how I can help you? In a weird way, we almost have to go through that journey as coaches and trainers in order to be able to relate to the audience. So it's interesting that you kind of hit that point yourself where your health was deteriorating through your quest for business, and then you're like, oh, actually, now you can see the other side of it, if that makes sense. Because like you say, a lot of the tactics that you can give someone who's fit and healthy, you can't necessarily give to someone who's not quite at that point. I've seen people with digestive issues, and then the personal trainer goes straight on to giving them 9 meals a day, to try and get ripped and all things like that. Or there'll be someone who's like really deconditioned and out of shape, and they'll just go straight into like intense beastings. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa! Like, you wouldn't get an old car out, 20-year-old car out of the
Yeah, yeah.
and red line it. Something would blow, something would break. You've got to get things finely tuned before you put your foot to the floor. And I guess this is the side of it which is not that well understood, but it sounds like you got quite a good grasp on this from your own personal experience, but also all the material you've studied.
Yeah, like I believe it was Scott Oldford. I'm not sure if are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, he made once a great post about the difference between coaching, mentoring, consulting, and even more like advisorship. And that really stood out to me because a lot of people in the industry are like trainers or coaches, and not just in fitness, in business, in relationship. And the coach role is basically asking questions. That's it. Why are you here? Like just questions that you come to your own conclusion. And, you know, connecting that to what you said with I've been through it myself, what I'm actually helping clients with or guys with, um, is more of a mentorship role. Means I've been through it. So not only can I coach you, but I can mentor you, showing you, hey, look, I was there as well with 80-hour work weeks and 5 hours of sleep. Here's the first thing I did. Here's the second thing. Not just do this, this, this. Here's what science says. Like, I don't give a shit what science says. And sorry for swearing here. Hope that's okay on your podcast. Um, yeah, it's like it doesn't matter what science says. Ultimately, what matters is what your schedule says, right? Science says the best time to work out is around 3 to 5 or 3 to 6, right? I'm not sure the exact number, but it's in the afternoon, right? And that doesn't matter if I can't, like, I can't work out at that time. I'm aware of it, but I can't. Why? It doesn't fit into my schedule. I have to do it in the morning. My afternoons are fully booked every single day. So there's no chance I'm going to flip my entire schedule that I get like 5% more muscle growth and sacrifice the business. Like, it's not going to happen. And that's what so many people don't see in the industry. And I was like that as well. I was like, yeah, you have to this. It's like, no, 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 no. What would make most sense for Dean? What would make most sense for James? And that's it. And as long as you can stick to it, and we talked about it before we pressed record, like that's all what matters. Like 80-90% of your results come from consistency. Yeah, we can go deep into hormones and other stuff. But at the end of the day, like if you just do like very basic stuff for the rest of your life, you're ahead of a lot of people and ultimately ahead of your old self.
And I think you made a good point there. It's got to be relevant to the individual. Like, it's got to be relevant to their schedule, their needs, their requirements. Because going back to the science, that I love science, and if you've got scientific proof, it goes a long way. But one of the challenges I find with science is the science is only good if somebody is funding it, right? And there's not a lot of funding for how to get someone working a 50-hour week recreationally fit. There isn't a lot of scientific studies on that. I find a lot of the studies come from professional sports athletes, and
Hmm.
you're finding all this information about how a professional sports athlete gets to the pinnacle of their career, and it's just not representative of the general population, if that makes sense. Like I find I've followed some of the protocols, and it's like, this much carbohydrate, this much this much that, and you think, well, that's fine if my career is 5 or 6 hours of intense physical
Yeah.
every single day. But I sit at a desk for 8 hours. I mean, do I really need this much carbohydrate? And do I really need this much? Well, there isn't a lot of scientific studies on what someone needs to be doing while they're sat at a desk. And this is part of the challenge I find with the science, because the science generally is taken on, very fit, well-conditioned individuals in an environment which is nothing like the average person. It's certainly not like someone who's, like you say, getting to 40s, 50-year-old, and their whole internal biochemistry is changing as they age. There's not a lot of science ready for that, or am I wrong?
No, you're right. Like when we look at research, we look at studies, like a lot of them are done with like, I mean, yeah, there's studies done with sanitary people, but it's not focused on like performance and exactly what you said. It's more like, yeah, let me say it like this. When they want to have like a bad habit or like bad statistics, they take those guys or those people. And when they want to have the other stuff, as you said, like with carbs and stuff, then it's almost always the athletes. Like, yeah, I've seen a trend there. Ultimately, it's like a study. One guy said it once. It's I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but he said the study is good on what information it gives you, but it's dangerous on what information it doesn't give you. And I 100% agree with that. Like, who sponsored the study, right? Who's behind it? Like, if you look at testosterone optimization therapy, TRT, all the studies, right, done by big pharma show nothing with heart issues like heart attacks and just heart problems. Nothing. All the studies done by non-big pharma show there's an issue there. So is this coincidence? I'll leave it up to your listeners, right? Everyone should ask these questions. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to push a narrative here, but I just want to say, hey, these are the facts. The study is done by these guys here. Just come to this experiment or this result, and the studies done by the other guys come to this result. So could there be a, a conflict of interest, right? So,
And
and that's
absolutely,
just one topic. There's so many.
whenever it comes to science, it's always a case of follow the money. And like you say, we don't want to get involved in conspiracy theories or suggest hidden agendas and all these things. But it's relative to the specific experiment that's taken place, right? And if you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
professional rugby players that have got to maintain size, and they've got a competitive season, and they're training for 20, 30 hours a week, then let's it doesn't take a genius to work out they're going to have to eat a lot more than the average guy. And then if the
Mm-hmm.
average guy then tries to eat in to keep up with those guys, they're just going to turn into a fat blimp, because we're not matching their level of output of exercise. So this is where I kind of find it very difficult to for people to get the information they need, if that makes sense. Like, we're all brought up on that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and we've got to fuel up for our day. And whenever it comes to, well, how do you get fit? Like, we like, you live in Marbella, but we have this saying in England, which is no carbs before marbs. So whenever anyone's getting ready to go on their holiday, they just like go on hard low carb. So but that's just like, well, what do you do when you lose weight? Is it paleo? Is it go vegan? Is it cut out meat? Should we go Atkins? Well, should we not do any of that? Should we go keto? How long can you keep keto for? Do you do keto for a season? Is it a lifestyle? Do you do it while you lift? And there's about a million different, I say, fads and different things, and no one really knows what the right thing is. So they're kind of dipping in out of one, dipping out another, And the fear is, are we just cementing further and further metabolic damage each time we chop and change? And where do we go? So I guess if I was asking on behalf of the listeners listening, going, right, it sounds like Mauro knows what he's talking about. However, I don't know what Mauro knows. So if I'm just starting out, is there a common place where people should start? Is it a case of just get moving first, or should people look at their diet first, or do you have any tips maybe for people who are just basically confused and just don't know where to kick off first?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, like, if someone really wants just to start making, lifestyle changes, he first of all, it's all about the long run, right? I like to tell all my clients, and I always tell them, hey, ask yourself this question: can I do what I'm doing right now for the next 20, 30 years? If not, then why are you doing it? Like, you're just going to fall back into old habits. You're going to gain back the weight. It's not going to work. So that's the first thing. Every action step you do, is that something you say, wow, that's sustainable or not? Right? Like, there's this 75 hard thing from Andy Frisella, and you work out 2 times a day. It's like, brilliant. How long can you work out 2 times a day? I know nobody that works out twice a day, every day, not even some, guys that compete in bodybuilding. So if you can do that, brilliant, do it. But as I said, I've
Yeah.
I've never met someone who can do it. So
I've,
mad
I've seen,
respect to everyone.
um,
Sorry.
I've seen that challenge as well, and I think he sort of kind of pitches it as a mindset challenge, like say almost beast yourself, just make yourself do it, isn't it? And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
great. If like you said, if you're trying to get mental toughness and resilience, that's the challenge to do, right? But then, as you're probably more familiar with some of your clients, some of these people are dealing with adrenal fatigue. So that the problem isn't always that they're not doing enough; it's that they're just doing too much of the wrong stuff, and their lifestyle is just not in balance, right? Like we all know that you damage yourself in exercise, and it's the restoration that builds you stronger. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what point are you restoring yourself if you're working out twice a day and doing some insane challenge, which is taking up every spare moment of your life just to try and fit all the steps in? Well, is your sleeping correct? Are you actually resting? Are you actually doing restorative practices? So these are the bits that you probably know much more about than I do, but just by default, 75 hard says there's 150 workouts in those 75 days by virtue of doing it twice a day. That's a lot to recover from, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the issue most people don't see, and especially, and I agree. He said it's for mental toughness, but a lot of people use it for weight loss, which is the worst thing you can do if you do, because again, it's not sustainable. Yeah, for mental toughness, it's good, but and the point that I'm trying to make here is a lot of people in his audience, especially men, are like business owners or business people. And what most people don't understand is you can, as a business owner, have the same plan as someone, in their 20s or 30s. And not just because time wise, because of your nervous system, right? You have a lot of mental and even emotional stress, right? That's all pushing your nervous system. Now, if you go work out twice a day and you do all these crazy things, like you're just gonna kill yourself, literally. Like, you're not gonna get the recovery you need, and you're gonna get sick, right? Resting heart rate is gonna go up, heart rate variability is gonna go down, and deep sleep is gonna go down. Typically, these are like the 3 signs that you can predict that you get sick. I'm doing some studies and research here, very, very interesting. And typically, you can see that every single time, like, you overtrain, and then it happens. And overtraining doesn't mean just working out twice a day. It can be working out 4 times a week. Like, let me give you an example. I've got so many, with calls and stuff that I got to do. Um, if I work out 4 to 5 times a week, I burn myself out and get sick. So three is like limit for me,
Oh wow,
right?
that's interesting because
Because my training is very intensive.
I used to think that
And
personal trainers who kind of were overtraining's a myth. I know a lot of personal trainers who say that, and they say overtraining is something that professional athletes have to deal with, but recreational athletes, they'll never have to worry about overtraining. And I've heard that said so many times that I do think that people have kind of got to the point where if they can't manage their 3, 4, 5 workouts a week, then they're just mentally weak. But you're saying that actually there's a genuine truth in the fact that recreational athletes can overtrain on just 4 sessions in a week.
Yeah, well, it's, I get where they're coming from a physical perspective. It's like, yeah, but your lifestyle is just eating, sleeping, and working out. That's it. But if you've got like, today I onboarded a guy, he has like 3 young kids, he runs 2 businesses. Like that guy, you put him 6 times a week into the gym, like gonna be horrible for his nervous system. So way too much. And yeah, then you can overtrain, not because of the workouts themselves typically, but more what happens aside from working out in your life. And most athletes, yeah, they just work out and rest and sit around. But if you've got all that stress and cortisol is pumped out, like there's so much going on. Yeah, like people, that's what they don't see. That's why lifestyle is so much more important than all the little studies that we can come up with. And not that I'm against science, I'm pro science, like I want to have it backed up, but it's like, yeah, science says you can't overtrain, but show me the study. Yeah, professional athletes in their 20s, how does their lifestyle look like? Okay, give me 20 business owners in their 50s, right? Let's do the study again. Let's see what results we got here.
Yeah, exactly. And if their diet's dialed in, if their internal hormones are on point,
Yeah.
then of course they're in a much better place. But also professional athletes, they're wise to this stuff. They plan in regular massages, they regular treatments. Like they literally plan in rest as almost part of their exercise calendar, don't they? They'll sit in the sauna and they'll just chill out because it's part of their week to chill out. It's part of the requirement of being an athlete is that you recover. That's how it works, right? and
I
and
agree.
they'll cycle their season in accordance with all of their their key events to make sure that they're at their peak at the right time. But then also they know that you can't stay at your peak, so they know that there's a down cycle where they dial it down, build it back up again. And most recreational athletes, we're kind of focused on that mindset that you got to go a little bit better than last week. But like you say, at some point there comes a point where you can't always be better, but it's got to dial in at some point. And I guess it's having that mindset that that's okay. And I think that's what you touched on at the start, where you've got to think about things for the long term opposed to the short term. Because, and you probably noticed it with the clients you work with a lot of business people, a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're probably A-type personalities, go getters. I want a result. I want to win. How am I going to hit the goal? And the idea of, well, you've got to kind of chill out so that you can, take a step backwards so that you can take 2 steps forward. I'm imagining that probably takes a bit of explaining at first, does it? Like they probably don't want to take their foot off the gas.
No, not at all. It's and a lot of people have unrealistic expectations with all the 30 pounds in 30 days and all these promises and diets and stuff. And yeah, like some people even try to undereat when I give them like their targets, for example, in terms of calories and macros. And we had this conversation too, I think on Facebook, that it goes way deeper into that than just that. But if we talk about that for just a moment, they look at it like, that's way too much. Like, are you sure? I'm like, hey man, like I've been doing this for years. Like it works, trust the process. And then sometimes they can be still a little bit skeptical and they try to undereat and say like, oh, look how fast I lose weight. It's like, yeah, but it's not going to hold on the long run. So stick to the process. And the process is slowly, it's boring, and you have to do the same thing over and over again. You have to track, you have to work out, right? It's not like, oh, if you do this. And yeah, sometimes I have to push them back. Like, hey, listen, this is how it works. And we can't, like, I have a guy, he wants to lose over 100 pounds, right? You can't, I mean, everyone has their own approach, right? But I've just found you can't lose the 100 pounds in one go. Like you have to like make a sandwich, right? Or like, okay, first 20 or 30, let's do a diet break. Let's see how you feel after that. Okay, do you feel you want to go another round? Yes. Another round? Yes. Another round? Yes. If you try 100 in a row, like gonna destroy yourself. Not physically necessary. I've actually just had a chat yesterday with the PhD, super smart guy, and he said not really in terms of metabolism, like very very little, but mentally after 6-7 months of being in a deficit and just dieting, like people won't track and won't do the work and won't be honest with themselves and with you as they were in day one. So if you give them that break and structure it up and tell them, hey, 100 pounds, that's going to take you 2 years. It's not sexy. And maybe, we're never going to work together. That's fine. You can go the diets and stuff. But when you're ready for realistic results, this is how long it takes. Like not in one shot, but, 30 pounds here, break, 20 pounds here, break, 20, break, 20, break. And then you'll get there, but then you'll keep it. Otherwise, yeah. So, and especially when they're like type A go-getters, hungry for success, they want to scale their business. I can tell you, the more successful they are in business, sometimes the worse the attitude is in fitness. I'm not judging or blaming anyone here. It's just like, they want to apply the same mindset they had or they have in their business.
Yeah, what you want.
Exactly. And it's like with fitness, it's actually the opposite. It's like, let's take a step back, and it won't go so fast. Like it just won't go so fast.
You mentioned that as made me think of two questions. I'll mention the first one, trying not to forget the other one. But you mentioned like if you lose 100 pounds in one go, like it's probably not going to work. And it made me think. We used to talk about this thing where like the body wants homeostasis, right? The body doesn't want to change, and the body kind of has a set point. So there was this theory, and I say a theory because I don't know how much hard science there is on it. There's a theory that if you're a 300-pound man, that the body's kind of used to being 300 pounds, and then as you kind of pull away and go down, the body is almost trying to get you back there. So you're almost fighting against your body to retain homeostasis, retain what's normal, if that makes sense. And I guess the theory goes that if you do it dramatically and drastically, then the body hasn't had enough time to adapt to the new normal. Therefore, it's just going to elastic band ping you back. And also that ping back can be even worse. It can almost then you end up being a 350-pound man instead of like all the weight you lost, if that makes sense. So sometimes, and this was a theory was often talked about, was if you do it gradually, and there's always this thing like 2 pounds a week, like it's always going to be linear, right? But it's not always linear. There's another little tip-top secret, but but obviously we're trained to think linear, aren't we? But the idea is if you do it gradually, then the body gets used to actually this is real, this is who I am, and then you haven't got to fight so hard against yourself to maintain it. Would you say there's truth in that, or because it was always kind of a theory, but I never knew if it was a correct one or if it was just sort of what we sort of believed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's less about the physiology or biology. It's more mental-wise and from an identity standpoint. Like
more in the mind.
The longer you've been living that identity, the harder it is to get out. That's why people say like, yeah, I'll do it later. It's like, you can do it later, right? I'm not here to decide what your priorities are, but just know 20 years of a bad habit, oof, like those are some deep roots. And what you said makes perfect sense. It's exactly that. You can see yourself as the fat kid or the athlete, right? And you can go down 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 20 pounds. But if you see yourself as the fat kid, you'll always make fat kid choices, right? And you want to see yourself as the athlete. And I'm not talking about some visualization or anything like that, but it's really how you see yourself and what habits you have. And unless that shifted, you're always going to fall back into those old habits. It has nothing to do with your hormones and all that stuff that, that people say like, oh, that's the fault. No, it's really how you see yourself and how you identify yourself with in the first place. Yes, hormones and all that stuff play a role, but first thing is really the mind, and that tries to trick you in like, let's go back. And I see it a lot of times, like especially for people who are obese, that's like a never-ending cycle that it just never stops and never stops and never stops. In terms of lose weight, regain it, lose weight, regain it, lose weight, regain it, and it's really it's really the mind that puts those things in. But as you said, if you do it slowly, right, and you make it as if it wouldn't be a change, that's when you can stick to it. So you kind of almost like silently going away from that identity, and it's good for your body to change. Like if I tell you do one push-up and tomorrow two and tomorrow three, and you build it up easy and you won't even notice the difference. But if I say one and then 500, it's like, right. So there's that resistance, and want to kind of flee from that resistance. We don't want to challenge it. There's no way we can win that battle. It's like holding your breath on the water. Like at some point, you got to go out and get some air.
You're speaking my language now, because it's all like in the subconscious is like the belief systems of who we are, isn't it? We create our own self-image, so to speak, and it could be so subtle that we don't realize it's happening. Like we can almost think it's not my fault, it's my physiology is pulling it back in. But I suppose the belief system is that strong, isn't it? It's that strong that it wants to sort of basically manifest who you are. And it sounds like the way you work, you get quite heavily into the mindset, because when you go to a personal trainer and you go, I want abs, or I want bigger muscles, or I want to lose 100 pounds, it's easier to think of the goal outside of yourself. Like you won't change, you'll just be 100 pound lighter. But the truth is, the goal is a manifestation of who you become. You have to become the athlete to be the athlete. And one of the challenges I always had when I sort of first got into the personal training industry was people kind of wanted to change without changing. It's like, I don't want to change as a person. I just want to look better naked. And it's like, yeah, but in order to be that person, you've got to change. And it's not just about changing your body. You've got to change. Your mind's got to change. And people are like, oh, no, I don't want to change. I want to be just who I am. I want to do all the things that I do right now. I just want to be ripped. I just want to look like a cover model. That's the only difference I want. It's like, what? There has to be other changes in order for you to achieve that. And the way you described it there made me think about, like in the UK, we have the lottery, which we probably have in Spain as well. And quite commonly, people become millionaires overnight. And if they don't change their thinking, they just lose it all, because you're thinking in terms of how much money you make. It's just the same, I guess, with your body. Like you have like a set point, which is kind of where your self-image is. And if you pull away from it too fast, you're going to think, well, there's something wrong here, because I know I want to be lean, I want to have abs, but it's just not me. And then you just kind of pull yourself back to being the old couch potato again. Like I like the idea of having a Ferrari and a villa and all this money, but it's just not me. And then you kind of blow the money. So it sounds like you're battling against that as well.
Yeah, I had the chat yesterday with really, really sharp guy. He's a mindset coach for I think over 25 years. And we talked about, because I want to make my program even better, and I want to get him on, that he does some guest trainings in there in terms of mindset and really going deep into the belief system. And he said, he's happy to do that and he believes it will help. And I really appreciated when he said that. He said, but here's the but, and he wants to be fully transparent. He told me, someone can work with me for 5 years, like daily accountability, everything. We work on the mindset, everything. They can stop. Typically that doesn't happen if it's 5 years, but they can stop if they still see themselves as a fat person inside of their mind, or as a poor person, right? Just for me, it's fitness, obviously, that's why fat. 6 months later, they will gain it all back. So, and I told him, well, how can we change that? And he's like, well, you can with strategies and tactics and philosophies, but ultimately, unless they really, really want it bad enough that they would do that internal work, nothing's gonna change. So it's like, wow, like all the tactics and strategies will never work if the person really deep inside doesn't say, wow, I love this, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And the strategy will play a role if they want to continue it, but ultimately it's more like the desire. Like in marketing, they say you can't create desire, and it's true. Like if you don't want it, like I can give you everything you need and really force that mindset in you. At some point, it's like, I don't want it. Like, I prefer to eat cake, right? Like, it's like the pleasure and being in pain. And if you don't want it, you don't want it, and you'll fall back. So, and
Oh, I
he's seen
totally
it
agree.
for himself, like, uh, because he started out in relationship coaching, and he saw like people would be like, for, would do all these things, and then before the marriage, they would cheat, right? It's like, well, you did everything so good for years, and then the moment before, it's like they just cheat and everything. And even though they hired a coach and all that stuff, and it's like, unless they want it, sometimes you just can't change people. That doesn't mean coaching doesn't help, but it's like, it's a two-way commitment.
Yeah, but you hope that coaching makes them want to change. Because, like you say, the result is just the reward for who you become in the process. And it sounds really cheesy and it sounds really cliche, but it is the truth. And the way you just mentioned that then, because I work in sales, my career is a salesperson. And as soon as you go to any party or anywhere and you say, I work in sales, everyone says the same thing. They say, oh, sell me this pen. You know, I like, and like you say, like people have this belief that if you're good at sales, you can sell anything to anyone. But the truth is, you have to locate the desire, right? So either you find the people who want it, or you have to try and convince someone they want it. And it's actually very hard to do the latter. Sales
Mm-hmm.
is all about finding people who want it and then connecting problems with solutions. So the right answer to sell me this pen is, why do you want a pen? Because until they have a reason to want it, you can't sell it to them.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and this is the misconception of sales. They're like, oh, if I just like make this pen so amazing and beautiful, they're just going to fall off their seat to buy it. Well, yeah, if they want a pen, yeah, but if they don't actually want a pen, and this is part of the challenge, as you kind of beautifully elaborated on, people come to the gym and say, I want this goal, and it's a case of, okay, if you want this goal, this is who you're going to have to become in the process, and it's like, well, I don't want to become that person. I just want the goal. And I thought, well, I can't just give it to you. I can't just pull it off the shelf and hand it to you. Like nobody can do your own press ups for you. You have to do the press up, and that has to come from your own internal motivation to change. So I guess we're running tight on time, and it's probably a good place to wrap up because if we start deep diving into the hormones and some of the training strategies, that's almost another call entirely. And I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah.
I don't want to open a rabbit hole of ideas now because otherwise we'll end up being half in one and half in another. I think so. If someone is listening to this right now, they know that they want to change. Like maybe it's aspirational to be bigger, beautiful, more abs, more physique, more more definition, or maybe it's the other side of the coin. They think, well, they've just let themselves go. And they want to lose the belly and they want to get in shape and maybe they want to be fit for their children. What would be your tip for them in terms of sort of preparing them for what's to come? Because it's like you say, you sound like you go quite deep into it. And it's not about the nutrition and the training. It's about, well, are you ready for a coach? So, are there any questions that you get them to ask themselves to think, well, are you ready for this? Is that have you got any tips for those sort of people to give themselves a check?
You mean like a readiness checklist?
Yeah, almost like, are you ready for a coach? Because I have this theory sometimes that people aren't actually ready for a coach. And they sign up for a coach, and as you say, the coach gives them everything they need, and they're like, "What do I do with that?" And it's like, well, this is what you paid for. This is the plan. This is the information you wanted, and they're almost not ready for it. So I don't know if there's any questions where you can sort of say to them, "Have a good think before you come and get a top quality coach," if that makes sense. Because are
I
you
see.
are you really aware of the journey you're about to embark on? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's actually a very, very good question. Gets me thinking right now. I believe, one question is obviously goes less into mindset, more about the values. Like, do you value time or money more? And both is fine, right? And if people say, like, I value time more, then it might make sense to get someone to have, everything outlined for them, whether it's in sales, what you do, or fitness, a relationship. Like, yeah, value time. I'm happy to pay money to save time. If it's more money, then that's fine as well. Then probably not. Then just try it on your own, and it will take longer, but with the right commitment, I believe most people should get there. In terms of readiness, it's really like I would make, coaching is not just like, okay, I get coaching and all is the same. Like they're very different approaches. So I would say like, what's my commitment that I can make time wise, resource wise, time wise, money wise, um, and basically these two things. And what am I willing to do to get the result? Right? Like I have a guy, to give an example to answer that question properly. He came to me, is like, hey, I read your post, I'm ready, I want to do the work, I can commit an hour a day, I can do this, but I will not eat chicken, rice, and broccoli for the rest of my life. If you tell me that, like, I'm not gonna do it. And I was like, well, luckily you didn't have to, right? I'm totally against actually that approach. And then we started working together, and it's been a great journey. So, but he had like clear standards. They said, hey, these are my non-negotiables. So really get clear first, money or time. And then if time, then what are your non-negotiables? Like how many hours or minutes can you commit a day? What in terms of foods? And then make a list and then say, okay, this is what I have here, this is what I can commit. And can I do it on my own? Yes or no? If not, get support. If yes, then start doing it. And that's it. And I believe if you have the commitments down, like, I believe that's how I did it. When I had my first coach, I was like, hey, money's not the problem. I got some savings and I'm 100% ready. I want to quit my 9 to 5, but I'm working long hours. I can commit around 1.5 hours a day, not more. And I can't post on Facebook, otherwise they're gonna kick me out of the bank. Can we work with that? Yes or no? And he's like, yeah. So then when I signed on, it's like start posting on Facebook, and I was like, well, now we've got the problem. Yeah, but ultimately,
that's a good answer.
Sorry.
I said that's a good answer. Like, I didn't mean to butt in because I feel like you've got more to say.
Yeah, like if I think back, this is how I did it, and this is what I would recommend to everyone. Like, what are you willing to give up and what not? And maybe is there maybe room in between? Like, for example, I don't have people give up alcohol like completely, but can we minimize it to like 1 drink a week? And it's like, okay, I can do that. Brilliant. That's it. And typically I see they don't want it anymore, not even once a week. It's like, I don't need it. But what's the minimum you can give up in the beginning? What do you want to keep? And then go to your coach, say, hey, I trust you. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. Can this work? Yes or no? And if not, well, are you willing to give up more for the rest of your life? Not for 90 days or stuff, because that's not going to work for the rest of your life. And if not, then this just means, okay, the result that you're after isn't just worth for that, and that's fine. Maybe, yeah, you'll have to do it later. Or maybe you have to rethink how bad you want it, right? Like marriage, are you willing to give up to have like one night stands? No? Well, that's fine, but don't do it.
Maybe marriage is not for you.
Yeah, just be honest with yourself. That's it.
So what I heard from you saying that was like, this is what you want, and what are you prepared to sacrifice to achieve it? And I guess be honest with yourself really, because we're all good at lying to ourselves, aren't we? And it's one thing to say I'm prepared to give up money, but that's only part of the equation. There are people who go, well, I'll pay for it, and therefore I've got the result. Well, no, you've still got to sacrifice other things. Like, the money is just a part of it, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you're really prepared to sacrifice. So that's probably a good place to end this conversation, although I'm definitely hoping we can speak to you again if you're open to it, because there's
100%.
some other massive topics that I'd love to blow the lid on and get your ideas on. So for everyone who's maybe only just been exposed to you today, where can they learn more about you or follow what you're working on? Have you got a website or some social profiles they can chase you on?
Yeah, Facebook is good. Just Mauro Stara. And just type it in Facebook and you will find me there. And this is where I publish my best stuff.
That's where they get all the best material. So I'll make sure there's some links as well below the podcast. But it's been a pleasure. Um, I feel like I stopped it early, but I just know there's a huge wealth of topics there, and I want to do each one of them justice. So I'm going to bid you a good day, and I hopefully catch you very soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me here.